Go!
Start.
Hey.
Con.
Ver. Send.
Shen.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 8th episode of Let's CoStaRt a Conversation. If you haven't seen or listened to our previous episodes, be sure to check those out on Spotify or YouTube. We started this podcast in order to create a safe space for us to talk about life, school, community, identity, and everything in between. We want to use this platform as a way to empower each other's narratives and to destigmatize what it means to be Vietnamese and Asian American, or just a person going through life in general.
Yeah, and breaking down identities in our community, allyship, mental health, all of these discussions that we've been having from previous episodes lead into our final episode of the series where we will be discussing leadership through the lens of student and professionals, and also what it means to be a leader in a historically underrepresented community. So on this episode, we have a special guest from our board of directors, Nathan Giang. Hello, Nathan. Can you introduce yourself for us? Your pronouns? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, James and Maya, for having me here. My name is Nathan Giang. My pronouns are he, him, his. Super excited to have a conversation with you all.
Thanks, Nathan. And I'm James Nguyen for he, him, his pronouns, and I am the Minnesota State Representative.
Yes, and if you guys don't remember who I am, I'm Maya Powers. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm an Illinois CoSR from UIC. And I guess before we dive into the thick of it, I just want to give you guys, the disclaimer, the trigger warning. So anything that we say in our podcast are the views and experiences of the individual speakers, and they do not reflect UVSA-Midwest as a whole. So just be aware that some of the topics we discuss in our podcast might be personal, might be sensitive. And so some of the triggers include trauma, anxiety, depression, racism, discrimination. So that's something sensitive to you. Just keep an ear out for that.
Thanks, Maya. All right, so Nathan, you're a college student once. We don't know everything about you, but we know that you've been incredibly involved with the community and have a lot of experience. So to kind of start this discussion, I'd like to start with a simple question and lean more into those experiences that you've had. We've discussed in previous episodes the common stressors like class, family, work life, just average student life. So in your experience from taking on leadership positions, how did you balance all of these for yourself while also managing others that you're responsible for?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think I have been very used to being incredibly busy all the time, but I enjoy it, and I think it comes down to having an incredible sense of empathy. An incredible sense of understanding where folks are coming from and what they're going through, not being too harsh to make judgment or harsh to make decisions. So as a leader, as you're working with other folks, you gotta treat them as if they're not your employee, but someone that you want them to learn and to grow. And with that takes a level of empathy to be able to try to understand what needs they want or what needs that they have, whether it be personally or professionally. If it's personally, sometimes you just need a friend to talk to. There's been many instances where we've had late nights planning for events where I would just call someone and be like, "Oh, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? How can I best support you?" And it's just really being there for them. And in terms of how to go about managing everything, it all comes down to, well, in college, I was like a sticky note, like madman. I would have just sticky notes across the whole wall, and I would just look at everything, and I would departmentalize the things I needed to do. But taking like a further step back from that, it was just along the lines of like setting expectations and setting clear boundaries of things that I am willing to do and not willing to do. The biggest thing that I learned in terms of like time management in college is saying no and not having to explain myself as to why I'm saying no for something. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, you did, absolutely. And you had a couple important points. The first one, empathy. I think it's almost a prerequisite for leadership to me, just because I mean, it takes so much time and energy to, take care of not just yourself, but also others. And like you touched on, like you're responsible for, in a way, not just managing like their work, but also like their mental health.
Yeah,
Exactly.
something I want to add on to that. Oh, sorry. Something I want to add on to that is I think VSA, in my experience, VSA culture has like, the bait train culture where we kind of like to peer pressure our friends into taking on these responsibilities. And that is fun to do. But I think Nathan, what you said about learning how to say no is something really important. And that's something I need to learn how to do myself, because I just like to do as much as I can, right? But then I do need to take a step back and kind of realize, okay, how much am I taking on and can I handle it? And I think another thing I want to touch on this is accountability. And then also remembering why you're here. So like something that is really special that I've learned from being a part of the CoSR cohort, something that Linda has reminded me of all the time, is that we're doing this for fun. We don't get paid to be here, and all these hours that we put in was like for free. We're doing this because we want to. So that's kind of something to keep you grounded. And if you're ever feeling like, why am I doing this? This isn't fulfilling. This isn't bringing me, any type of happiness anymore. When it starts becoming a job and when it like starts to not become fun anymore, that's kind of when like to reevaluate your situation.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the whole you're volunteering your time, and because you want to be here and it brings you enjoyment, it brings you fun. I've been involved in this organization for 9, almost 10 years now, so it's been quite a long time. And if you're involved in something that much, you have to truly deep down really enjoy the work that you are doing.
Yeah, Nathan, you've honestly left. you're leaving a legacy, a VSA legacy of 10 years. So we appreciate all the stuff that you've done for this organization. Just putting that out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
To gear this conversation, because we have to remind ourselves that our constituents are most likely VSA students. So I have a scenario that I just like want to pose, because I feel like this happens more often, especially this past year or two. So for example, you're on board. One of your board members is swamped with school, with maybe relationship troubles, family issues, maybe just all of it. And it makes it difficult to focus on VSA to the point that they, consider quitting. I guess this isn't like a VSA specific example. It could be just in your professional life as well. But yeah, just like kind of what's your take on that scenario and how would you kind of go about it?
Yeah. So, and if this person is just completely overwhelmed, underwater, is on the verge of quitting, I think that you really need to understand empathy here. And what I mean by that, it's really easy for you to think what's good for the organization versus what's good for the person. However, what I've learned that those things go hand in hand. So I guess before convincing the person to stay, you need to ask this person like, hey, does this organization still bring you enjoyment, or is it just because you're just overwhelmed with a lot of things? Do you still like being a part? Do you still like giving back to the community? Do you still like planning events and doing all that kind of stuff? Then if that's the case, that person still wants to be a part of the community, so they should still stay, right? If deep down they still love what they do, then they should still stay. If they don't, then there's no point in keeping them on. Once you've answered that first question, then the follow-up question is you need to ask them, what is the best way that you can support them? And this has to be a team effort. There has been many situations with the UVSA-Midwest e-board where there have been e-board members that have taken breaks, right? I'm sure you all do not know about that at all, that they all seem like as if they are one cohesive team of all five. No, that is never the case. It's very rarely that there are five people all on the same, or is it 4 or 5? 5, right? Yeah, 5. It's very rarely that there are 5 people on board at the same time, all working together. If that's the case, you need to be really clear with them and tell them, like, I need you to clearly communicate with me on the things that you need help with. And you need to have a conversation across your whole board and tell them, I need you to be brutally honest with me. Like, are we capable of doing this? How can I best support you? What makes the most sense? Because at the end of the day, like, yes, these things are important. Yes, these organizations are important. But as a student, you are there for an education first, then the experience afterwards. So it's very important to be mindful of that. And that's how I would treat it.
Yeah, honestly, now that you say that, that's pretty admirable, because I think on the outside, eBoard, they just look like they have their stuff together, I would have never have guessed that, behind the scenes people are dealing with their own things. But I mean, I guess now that you bring it up, that's a reality. I know for like me doing active sorority work, like there was a point in the semester where I had to tell our president, hey, you need to take a step back. It's when VIA1 stuff really started to like roll, really started to get the ball rolling with VIA1 stuff. By the way, for listeners who are not aware, VIA1 is UVSA-Midwest annual flagship conference, and I am a part of the team that's putting that together. But anyway, definitely that communicating with, whoever your leader is, like, hey, I need a breather. That's totally okay. And you're not a bad person for wanting to take a step back, and you're not weak or you're not incompetent for wanting to give yourself that break, because everybody needs that.
Yeah, definitely. Just asking, are you okay? First, then afterwards, just letting them know that you support them, and whatever work that they have, that could wait, because your mental health should be prioritized. So, yeah, and then, like I mentioned about past year with the pandemic, all these stressors are compounded by the fact that we're living in a pandemic as well. And it's evident that it's made things a little bit more tricky to navigate around with engaging our communities and students. Yeah, opening up the floor a little bit, what piece of advice do y'all have for our student leaders, or in student orgs? I have a few points I'd like to share myself, but I'd like to hear your thoughts first.
So I think more than ever, this is the time for folks to be really creative in the way they do things. I think that if anything that these past couple of years have taught us is that it's okay to challenge the status quo. It's okay to think outside the box. It's okay to question why you're doing things. It's okay to ask why. And I think that if that's the case, you really need to essentially throw everything that you know out the window in terms of past events, all that stuff, and not necessarily start over, but like take a different path. And so in terms of tangible stuff, that means leaning into technology. Technology is a great tool. When I was in college, we had Skype, and that was mainly about it. I dated, I had a girlfriend, long distance relationship, and there was no FaceTime. There was no Zoom. All I had was Skype, and that was rough, right? And things have progressed so much further. So really lean into technology. There's Gather Town, there's House Party, there's Zoom. And yes, there is Zoom fatigue, but there's also different things that you could do too. So lean into technology, think outside the box, social distance, of course. And there's also like benefits of being remote too. So for example, I can't tell you the last time I wore dress pants or dress shoes, right? I've worn like sweatpants and shorts for 2 years straight. And
I felt
it's
that.
been phenomenal. It's been
I felt
phenomenal.
that. Like only being dressed business casual from the waist up is very, very spot on to the Zoom experience. Something that I know my sorority does for Zoom, like to combat Zoom fatigue, is that we acknowledge it's not the same environment as like being in person, sitting in a chair for 2 hours. So like what we do is we give ourselves breaks like every 2 hours, and during a meeting, give ourselves a break to kind of recoup water breaks. Stuff like that is really important when like doing Zoom events. And um, during our VO1 fall retreat, our hospitality director Richie did this really cool eyeball yoga to kind of combat Zoom fatigue. So he kind of had us do like different movements with our eyes to wake ourselves up, and that was really nice. Yeah.
Oh, I just remembered, like we've had like Zoom conferences the past 2 years, but Midwest tried out, gosh, what was it? GatherTown. That was a great idea. And that like, I think was the only one of that type. For our listeners who don't know, it's like, how would you describe Maya? Like a Stardew Valley kind of platform?
It's like an RPG. It kind of looks like Pokemon. Yeah, it's like this website, and instead of doing meetings through Zoom, the old basic Zoom, you kind of have your little character and you like interact as a character in a space. And then there are different things in the virtual space that you're interacting in that like kind of work as if you were in a real conference. So you could go into a room and sit down with your family, or you could click a little thing and it would be like a YouTube link to a presentation. Like it was really cool. I actually think my sorority stole GatherTown from us, because for our Midwest sisterhood rally or something, we use GatherTown, and I'm like, the only people I know who have done this is UVSA-Midwest. So interesting. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah. And
okay,
it got pretty popular for a bit there.
Yeah, GatherTown is great and super innovative.
I should have asked Nathan, have you seen GatherTown? Were you part of that planning at all?
Yeah, I was actually at that conference for GatherTown. Yeah, I had to be there. I graduated Purdue University, so I had to support.
Oh my God, awesome. I think some other advice that I have for student org people are, I guess my biggest thing that I've learned from doing student org stuff for the past couple of years is that what you give to the organization is what you get back. Does that make sense? So if you're putting in a lot of work and a lot of passion into the org, you will get all of that back. And that could look like the relationships, the networking opportunities, the growth, the leadership growth. But the more you put in, the more you get back. So I guess you kind of just have to evaluate like how involved, how passionate do I want to be about this. But you never lose from putting in hard work, in my experience.
I 1,000,000% agree with you on that. All the skills, business skills, negotiating tactics, all the experiences, all the friends I have now is through VSA. My mentor is through VSA as well. My professional mentor is through VSA, and I wouldn't have the job I have or the lifestyle I have if it was not for VSA and the networks and the connections I had in VSA. Phenomenal organization.
Yeah, and I guess that leans into more of what advice I had. So as a student, you're probably asking yourself, like, what's next for you, right? You probably have a plan figured out, or maybe you don't. Take it as from us, regardless if you have plans laid out or you're looking for your next big thing. The fact is, you're surviving through, or have survived through, some of the hardest and most emotionally draining years of your life. Job applications, they're gonna get you down. I applied like 100 over the course of like 2 or 3 years, and had like maybe like a third like actually get back to me. That was stressful.
Oh my God, James, you're making me so scared. I haven't graduated yet. I'm horrified.
I'm so sorry, but it's what a lot of us have to deal with, and the rejections or silence from these companies, it's going to make you feel some type of way. Don't let that break your spirit. Kind of lean into your community, like Nathan, you said, and Maya. Lean into your network. There's reserves of untapped, unsolicited advice out there for you. And I want to stress to our students that no one is inadequate just because you didn't get a job right out of college. If you're taking a gap year, if you're traveling, if you're working in your hometown, that's okay. That's what you feel is best for you, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, thanks, James. That's super insightful. That, you know what, honestly, that does make me feel a little bit better about my situation. But yeah, it gets a lot of pressure. But, you know, and with that, we're going to segue into discussing, you know, what leadership looks like beyond school. But first, we're going to take a short intermission. So I will see you guys soon.
All right, welcome back to the second half of episode 8, everyone. In the first half of this episode, we dived into our experiences as students. But as I mentioned, we're onto the future in this half. So shifting gears more towards leadership in the professional world and what it means to continue being engaged in your community. So first question I had, diving into it, many of our constituents are transitioning into professional jobs or will transition soon. Nathan or Maya, what leadership skills from college do you think have been most transferable or will be most transferable to the professional world for you, VSA or non-VSA related?
Yeah, this one's all for Nathan because I'm not quite there yet, but I would really like to know myself.
So there's multiple different levels to look at it, right? Fresh out of school, first trouble is finding a job. Something that I experienced, and when I just graduated undergrad, was I was under immense pressure to find a job right away from my family, and I want to say it's okay to not have a job right outside of school. You don't need it. And then also something that I recognized was being Asian American, Vietnamese American, first generation American, we lack a lot of resources in terms of networking with their family. My family do not have white collar jobs. They don't have medical jobs. They don't have finance jobs. They don't have those nice jobs that a lot of other folks, parents that are non-minorities do. And as such, it's recognizing that fast and then building that network outward away from the family, looking for that. And not being scared to ask for help. So what that means is, like, do you remember when you went to your first general body meeting, how like nervous you are, but eventually you reached out, you talked to the president, or you talked to the secretary, or you talked to something and you got fully involved. The next thing you know, you're like the executive director of a conference, right? The same thing applies out in the real world when it comes to networking. With my mentor, I had met her at a UVSA conference in Boston, and she told me what she did. And I walked up straight to her and I was like, how do I be like you? Right? And that's all it took. And she taught me the ropes. She taught me everything. And she taught me how to interview, how to write a resume. She prepped me for the job. She prepped me for success. And that's what got me here today. And you are going to fail a lot, and it's okay. I think I had 48 rejections. And that's okay. That's okay. It's okay to have that many rejections. You're going to be fine. You're going to be okay as long as you're thoughtful about what you do, and as long as you tell yourself it's going to be okay.
Yeah, honestly, thanks for that, Nathan. I think, you know, I am Mexican American, and I definitely resonate with, like, I am a first generation college student. I didn't have anybody to help me navigate college at all, even applying for college. And then now I'm almost finished and like going to the workforce, and like my family doesn't like know how to support me. You know, all they can do is like root, like cheer me on, but it's really intimidating, especially going to school and all my peers, you know, have these connections that I just simply do not. And in my field that I want to work in, which is entertainment. A lot of people get their jobs from people they know, and it's just really, really daunting. And I guess one of the questions I want to ask you is, how do you also deal with imposter syndrome? Because I feel that a lot. And then also just like me, I know you can't talk on this, but also just me as a woman, I feel imposter syndrome in spaces a lot. So have you ever dealt with that, or like, have you experienced that, and like, how do you handle that?
Completely valid to feel that way. I have had imposter syndrome for a very long time, and it's okay to feel that way. And like, to be honest, Maya, like, I know people who are like 52, who are like partners at firms, and they still have imposter syndrome. And to be honest, like, no one really knows what they're doing. They don't really know what they're doing, but they know how to figure it out. They know how to problem solve. They know how to find the answer. And I guess another way to answer that is a good timeline is usually you spend about 2.5 to 3 years in a role, and that's when you feel the most comfortable. But even then, you run into challenges as well. It's important to remember your job is to not do the job, is to solve the problems in the job. Does that make sense? And that's what you have to remember.
Yeah, I guess on the note of imposter syndrome, I've also had the feeling, like every actually role at some point, I question, should I even be here, and question whether like the people I'm serving deserve more than what I'm giving them. But you also have to remember that at the end of the day, you were chosen for this. At least one person or several people, committee looked at you and said, we think you're the person for this. So I think keep that in mind. If you're feeling some type of way, we'll help you.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the follow up on that is once you've made it, once you fought for your place for yourself at the table, don't afraid to bring other folks like you up too. Because me being an Asian American, I had very few people that looked like me, that talked like me, that acted like me, that had the same interests like me in my career field. And especially as like you were saying, Maya, as a woman, right? There are very few women in leadership where I'm currently at. And it's okay to be the first one at the table. Just don't forget to bring others up with you too, to support others up with you too.
That is great advice. Thank you so much. I will remember that.
And that does tie into the next discussion topic. Because for this topic, we want to revisit past discussions in our previous episodes, because being a leader also means knowing who you are and who you represent. So for y'all, what does leadership look like in career and representation?
I think leadership and representation, there is a balance, right? That balance being, I think, is important to be diverse in leadership, but I also think it's important that people are qualified to be in those positions. But also it's important to view diversity outside the lens of just race. For example, let's say that I am a Vietnamese American. There may be someone else who is also Vietnamese American, but was adopted. Their experiences are completely different than your experiences, and they might not understand the same problems you understand. So I think that oftentimes in the corporate world, they're like, oh, my company is diverse. I have 30% like Black folks and 20% like Asian folks. No, it goes beyond that too. It goes multiple different layers. It goes into ethnicity, background, education, income. So I can go on and on about this, but essentially it's understanding that there are multiple layers to diversity, and being conscious and being aware of that, but also always challenging the status quo. And what I mean by that is don't have to do things because it's the same thing that you've always done. You don't have to hire the same person because you've always hired a person that looks and acts like that. You don't have to. If anything, it brings more value to the company. It brings more value to you when you bring people with more diverse experiences. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, it does. Sorry, this just makes me think of a meme. I just saw it was like, person A, why are we doing it this way? It makes no sense. Person B is like, my trainer had bad training and their trainer had bad training. This is a dynasty of bad training. I'm not going to let it die with you.
I felt that that's conversation I hear a lot whenever I join a new job. And there's always one. There's always like the whole team has never been trained properly. It's just like a generational curse. Yes, we want to be the ones to break the generational curses, right?
Yeah, and historically underrepresented communities gaining seats of power means more resources to reinvest in the community. Like if your community can make that income, it means you have more opportunities to grow and opportunities to implement policies if you go that direction to impact you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, which is why it's so important to dedicate your time to mentorship as well, to mentor other folks that have the same experiences like you. And like you said, James, like once they're also in a position of financial power, and then they're able to invest back into their communities, give them more resources, and the cycle continues. And then that's how you uplift the whole community. There are definitely different other avenues that you can use to uplift the community, but a very important factor that folks often forget is the financial aspect, the knowledge aspect, the professional aspect, and the education aspect. Once you've incorporated all those, and then your community will succeed.
Yeah, and then this also ties back to our previous episode of representation, with, I guess, the question of how many folks you see in positions of power and management, but also like media representation. We spent a whole episode talking about amazing folks in the Viet American community, such as Robin Tran, and the impact of that representation. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to think of who else that we mentioned in the episode. Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah and Win.
Yes.
Tiara from TikTok.
Yes. Sorry, my brain just
no worries.
went out there. But yeah, and tying back into our points here of the importance of putting yourself out there and becoming a leader, and using your privilege to bring others up and showing that we have a stake in our communities. Most of us are first or second gen, and we're starting over, almost just building from the ground up. Don't have leaders in positions of power who experience the same things that we experience. So we have to be the lead for that.
Yeah, I definitely agree 100%. Growing, even now today, I can probably count on one hand how many Asian men that were managers or that were CEOs or that were or any of that. And then even just like in like the movies or just in social media, like yes, I discussed before, there's very few folks that look like me out there. So it definitely created a sense of identity crisis for me, right? And it also gave me like an incredible amount of imposter syndrome, because I'm just like, oh no, like I'm not doing what Asians are portrayed to be doing, you know, I'm not submissive, I'm not weak, I'm not whatever the stereotypes were, right? Which are completely terrible. Like instead I'm very loud, right? So like a lot of the times there's a lot of like questioning, like, is this okay? Am I okay to be doing this? Which also like leads into like a high amount of anxiety, because you always feel as if you have to perform 150%. An example of that for me today was I wrote 1 trillion instead of 1 billion, just a simple misspelling. I had a total freak out. And like I had to call my mentor, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, all that kinds of stuff. And she reminded me that it's okay, everybody makes mistakes. And that's just the reality of for me, my experiences of having folks that don't look like me, because I always feel I always have to prove myself. But when you have a seat at the power, or a seat at the table, and you bring others with you, then as they grow up and they get that wisdom, they get a sense of understanding of that what is expected of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And something I want to add to that is in regards to like how important it is to put yourself out there if you want to become a leader. I think, humans like naturally psychologically like risk adverse beings. So we have a lot of fear. We're like fearful beings. And so we don't take risks. And that's like an inherent aspect of our psychology. And I think just like as you grow your leadership, just not being afraid to take those risks. Because I think I heard this somewhere from like another podcast, but it was just talking about how when people are on their deathbed, the one thing that they say that they, regret in life were things that they didn't do rather than things they did. And so going back to just like not being afraid to take those risks and putting yourself out there because you only have like one life. I know that sounds cheesy, but I think, it's really real. And when you become older, you probably think about those things a lot. Like, should have just done that, or I should have went for it. So yeah, do all you can, basically.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that 100%. I think it's very important to take risks, put yourself out there, but be very calculative and strategic in how you take your risk. Don't just jump into the deep end and expect to know how to swim. No, you will drown, but I mean, you might survive, right? But be calculated in your risk. Be smart in your risk, please. So an example for me is I went to school for mechanical engineering, and I was an engineer, like true and blue, and I wanted to be an engineer so bad. I got into the field like 2 months in, I realized I hated engineering. I hated it so much. But then I took the risk to do the career change, to change careers, but calculated in it, right? My risk adverse Asian parents, I love them, but they're like, oh, just stick it through, just stay in engineering, you went to school there, blah, 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 blah. I wasn't happy. I was not happy. And so then I took the risk to quote unquote throw away my education, as they said, and then find a job that I enjoyed.
Yeah, Maya, definitely cheesy, but it's true. Take risks because you only have so much time before that your window kind of closes.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking about this a lot, especially when I saw those VO1 director applications come through, and I was just thinking like, the bid packet that my university worked on, we worked on that 2 years ago. Like it has been something that we had thought about a long time ago, and like COVID, and by 2 years, like by the time 2 years passed, all the leaders that would have wanted this position were gone and graduated. And then I was just like, oh God, do you still want to do this? And I just thought, if it is going to be at UIC, since, our bid packet was accepted, like, this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. Who knows when I'll have this chance again? So I just like, that was a big risk that I took by even applying for this position and just thinking that if I didn't, I would regret it a lot. And so glad I did. But yeah, I know it's cheesy, but thanks, James.
And I'm really glad you took that risk too, Maya, because it's been a really good pleasure working with you, and I've really enjoyed seeing your leadership grow.
Yeah, just you watch, Nathan. When March rolls around, I will have you shaking in your boots, Nathan. You'll be like, who is this girl? This is not the same girl I went on hotel tours with. I guarantee. Yeah.
All right, time check here. To wrap things up, to our listeners, whether you're students or not, we're proud of what you've accomplished so far. We encourage you to keep grinding, take risks. You will get to the finish line. But in the meantime, we hope you're able to take something away from us this episode and previous episodes and had a chance to check those out yet.
Oh yes, okay. I also want to give a shout out to, our behind the scenes folks. Me, James, and Nathan here. We're talking to you, but you guys do not get to see all the folks who work on this podcast that are equally as important to, the outcome. And so I want to give a quick shout out to the rest of our CoSR cohort, for helping us gather resources, topics, and always just supporting us, whether or not they're talking on the episode or not. And then a shout out always to our favorite VPI, Linda. Her guidance has been amazing. And for those of you who don't know, our CoSR term is coming to an end in only a few days. And Linda has been our rock. So Linda, if you're listening, thank you for everything.
Thank you. We love you. And with that, thank you everyone for tuning into episode 8 of Let's CoStaRt, a conversation with guest speaker, Nathan. We talked a lot about our experiences as leaders in our various roles and what it means to put yourself out there and explore different routines and spaces. I'm thinking about this more as we can move on to the next big thing and prepare to pass the torch on to our next cohort of state representatives. But in the meantime, best of luck on finals or with whatever challenges you're facing, and happy holidays. Thank you, everyone.
Happy holidays. Bye.
What are 3 words that you would use to describe this cohort?
I would say chaotic, fun, and loving, I'd say.
The first word is probably had ass because of all the things that we have done and just beyond crazy moments in which no old CoSR has ever done before. I would also just say very open-minded because we all come from very different backgrounds, different identities, in which it allows for us to kind of learn about each other, which I think is super amazing. And then I would also say family because of that open-mindedness and being there for each other. All of us have had our ups and downs in which even if we had to take a break or we just needed someone to lean on, we were able to do that for each other, even if it was just between 2 people or between the whole cohort. I think I can honestly feel that I'm able to be vulnerable and be able to kind of express my true self to this cohort.
Mess. Crazy. Spicy.
Unique, caring, and authentic.
For me, I'd say my first word is probably growth, just because it's amazing to see the growth that we have, coming together in our first meeting, at least me and Jennifer's first meeting, because we were late additions back in April, and seeing the growth that we took along with the rest of the cohort was really amazing. Passionate is probably another word, just because it's amazing to see how passionate we all are for supporting our VSA, supporting UVSA-Midwest, and just the support we have for each other. And probably my last word, which I think is the strongest word of all the 3, is family, just because whenever times are tough, someone has a down day in our cohort, we're all there to pick them up. And we just support each other every single day, not just in VSA endeavors, but just life in general. So that's been really amazing to be a part of this family of CoSRs.
I would say supportive, because we're all very supportive of each other, and if things happen, then we're okay with it and we support each other because of that. We're also very persistent, so this year, despite a lot of changes and a lot of things going on in our lives, we are still persistent and we still push through. And then lastly, I would say we're very diverse, because there's a lot of things about us that are unique and different, and that's just what makes our cohort very special.
Supportive, passionate, and definitely goofy.
Hi, it's Maya here, the Illinois CoSR, and if I were to describe my cohort in 3 words, it would be comforting, because my cohort is literally my comfort people. They make me feel so cozy and warm and welcomed, and I love them. And then intimate, because our whole cohort is so intimate and we all have a really good relationship and we can talk to one another about everything. And then I would also say they're very understanding, because each and every single one of them is extremely understanding about what's going on in the world and what's going on in like our lives, and there is no pressure at all. We are just really empathetic with each other.
What is your favorite memory of this CoSR term?
Oh my god. So my favorite CoSR term, besides this trip that we were just recently on, I think something that actually like was really meaningful to me is when we were all on our first informal podcast together. We had really Richie and Molly did like a great job leading it, and we were able to do like We're Not Really Strangers, and then also be able to kind of learn about each other and kind of like crack jokes and like do humor. And I think what really like inspired me was just like all the questions in which we got a little deep and kind of just talked about. But then also just like, you know, Richie's energy in which like he really tries to like uplift all of us and be able to like kind of be like our own selves and just, you know, giving those good vibes. And then, you know, every single person like adds on to it, in which like it kind of encourages me to, you know, be a part of that. You know, frankly enough, like I am a leader, but also very observant, in which like I feel shy, but you know, everyone here makes me like a better person.
Yeah, favorite memory is probably CoSR retreat. First day, you meet these people. I mean, you go through a full term without meeting them, and then you realize that you don't really know how tall they are.
I would say hands down the best memory from my CoSR term is CoSR retreat, which was at the end of our term. Everybody flew to Chicago and we all hung out and got to see each other in real life and bond and do fun touristy things together, and it was just so amazing and the highlight of my 2021.
I would say my favorite memory would have to be like just seeing like the podcast like coming to life. Like for the longest we talked about like what CoSR Project could look like and stuff like that, and I know I mentioned like podcast being like one of my like ideas, and just like seeing everyone come on board and like it come to life, and it happened.
My favorite memory, oh my gosh, so no wait, what is my favorite memory? There's so many. I think my favorite memory would have to just be the weekly meetings and just getting all the support and love from my fellow cohort. It was really a good, fun environment, such a positive environment, and I wouldn't trade my experience for anything.
I would say my favorite memory from our CoSR term would probably be CoSR retreat. I think it was just really fun and nice to get to see everyone in person for the first time, but also for the last time, since our term is ending soon, when CoSR retreat was happening. Another memory I would also say besides CoSR retreat would be our first meeting. I don't remember what exactly it was, but I just remembered we played We're Not Really Strangers, and I think it was cool getting to know everyone for the first time and like getting more intimate and creating those bonds early on. And so besides like all the business stuff, I really liked and enjoyed the interpersonal memories that we've made as a CoSR cohort.
Favorite memory, probably the first recording of the first episode for Let's CoSR conversation. That was interesting just because like it was at least my first time recording a podcast. I wasn't sure what my expectations were going into it, and like we were throughout the whole episode and the recording of it, like it was really cool to like have these ideas flowing and just like have this conversation. And I remember at one point I honestly forgot that we were even like recording a podcast, like because we were talking about like our identities, how important they were to us, and it's like good to see how like us being vulnerable for a little bit and just like talking with each other about it and like showcasing our thoughts and views on that topic, and like how it grew from like that one episode to like the episodes we have now, all the topics and fun we've had doing the podcast has been honestly pretty cool to see grow.
My favorite memory of CoSR is probably would be every Google meeting, to be honest. Everyone is just so caring, authentic. Their energy is very contagious. Every time I go to a meeting, I always end up smiling and laughing. Yeah.
Any words of encouragement or advice for rising leaders?
I'd say if you have any regrets or not regrets, if you have any like doubts or like a second thoughts on doing something like a leadership position, just like go for it. Like I remember I didn't apply for like the second or the first run through for like Indiana CoStar. And I remember like doing the second run through, I was like persuaded by a few people, and I honestly thought about not doing it. But I was like, you know what, like let's do it. Like let's take a shot on it. Like it's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, just because like, you know, like having this experience of being CoStar, representing my state, being a part of this cohort, and just doing a lot of things that I wouldn't think like myself growing from, you know, a regular member of my VSA as a freshman to now. Like it's insane to see the change I've made. And I feel like if you have that mindset of just like not having any doubts, not having any regrets, and just going forward with decisions, not being impulsive obviously, but like just doing something based on your passion, stuff like that, I think goes a long way, and like, it helps you evolve, not just as a leader, but as a person in general.
Just be yourself. Go with the flow. Be authentic. You got this.
Always try to find your passion and try to find a reason to keep doing what you love through hard times. So even if you might be going through some things or times might be tough and you might feel like wanting to give up or just taking a break, I think it's good to always take a step back and think, why are you doing this and how can I keep doing this? Because for me, at least for this CoSR term, despite, you know, a lot of things happening all at once, I have always been able to come to CoSR meetings because I know that my CoSR cohort will always be there for me and they're really supportive, and just being able to see them at the meeting and just talk to them makes me feel a lot better.
Just do it. If you're thinking about it, if you're like, I don't know, I don't think I'd be that good, just do it. Just go for it. You're literally not gonna know until you're in that position. And if you make mistakes, who cares? We are human, you know, and we make mistakes so that we can learn and grow. So if you're questioning yourself, just go for it.
My advice to any rising leaders would be to use your new leadership opportunities as a chance to grow out of your shell and to think outside the box and expand your skill set and try new things. And then to also remember that if you're doing, for example, nonprofit work, you're doing that work to serve other people and to benefit the community. So also decenter yourself when you're working and remind yourself, who are you doing this for and who are you helping?
Yeah, for advice, I generally like to keep to myself a lot because I don't like to bother others in general. Some days will be extremely difficult to do anything, but you know, you roll out of bed, maybe you look like a bottle of regret, worst in your life. You don't have to explain everything, but do take a moment to be emotionally available and share those troubles, those burdens with your team. They want you to do well.
I feel like this one is like used a lot, but like don't be afraid to speak up, and like if there's something like you want to like suggest it. Like there might be people who shoot it down, there might be people who like want to hear more about it, and that's definitely how I felt about like the podcast. And that's a success for me, but you know, not every time that you bring up something is gonna be a success, but just bringing stuff up and being confident in your choices will get you somewhere.
I think the one thing I can tell you to like anyone that's watching this is to give it a shot. I think a lot of people are normally scared or intimidated or think like this is something that's not for them, but you have to also ask yourself, how do you know that? Like, what makes you think that? I think oftentimes, like, you know, I didn't think I was good enough for CoSR, but here I am, right? And I think a lot of my cohort can also agree, like, you know, we didn't 100% know what we were going into, but did we have a good support system? Absolutely. Were we able to show our emotions and like express ourselves to each other? Yeah. But I think the more important thing is that we all took on the challenge and took the positive risk to do something that like I don't think we've ever seen before. And personally, I'm really proud of that, and I think this cohort will like last in my heart for a long, long, long time, probably forever. Let's go!
Start.
A.
Con.
Ver.
Set.
Shun.